what it is that you do bring to the table and what actually can be used. A lot of times, for those of us who have been about this way for a long time, we can probably remember instances as children feeling, thinking things that were completely out of the norm of the people we were surrounded by. But through our desire to want to fit in and be understood, we began to, or some of us were traumatized out of some of our weirdness, let's say. We were traumatized out of our weirdness, whether it be through spankings, scoldings, ridicule, or just a general isolation that comes from being misunderstood. That traumatization sets in. And due to that, that trauma, we begin to lose. Our spiritual gifts are now diminished. Our ability to speak to spiritual entities, see them, conversate, negotiate, it starts to fade to the point that we no longer even see them, because the understanding of our mind has changed. And remember, your eyes only see what your brain has comprehended. So once your brain starts to go on what we can call a data lockdown, or a higher data, a light code lockdown, when it starts to go into a lockdown mode, what happens is your vision begins to change. There's a movie that is really good that kind of outlines this a little bit, called The Spiderwick Chronicles, that I used to have my youth class watch, and we would do decoding on that movie. But it's actually a good movie for adults as well, because it explains this concept pretty well, and it deals with the fairy kingdom, and it's a mystical movie, but it's almost like the Peter Pan, where it gets into what happens over time as you become an adult, really the corruption that sets in, the spiritual corruption, where you no longer are pure of heart, because you've now aligned yourself and constricted yourself by a set of rules and regulations that your spirit never actually identified with. So, whereas we have cognitive dissonance, which sets in when you're doing something or identifying with something that you innately know is not correct. It's the same thing with the spirit. You can become spiritually insane when you are now perpetuating and living by a format of spirituality that with deep down in your spirit is not actually how the spirit works. So you forsake your purity. And your purity, or your ability to live within the heart chakra, which deals with acknowledging, pick and choose, but because they've now caged in their perceptual awareness, they don't understand things like Oshun being a prostitute and what that means. Because in their mind, the spiritual dissonance is set in such a way where they don't even understand that Oshun never walked the planet. So if Oshun was a prostitute, Oshun is a prostitute, because these things are spiritual allegories that were put forth for us to understand certain things. So therefore, there was really no time placed on them. These are things that are ongoing stories, and they change and they evolve as you change and evolve. So if it's saying that Oshun energy has been prostituted, then what does that mean? Well, just real simple and real quick, though we could go deeper into it. If Oshun is an archetype of love, and it's saying that love is being used, abused, and sold out, well, that would basically reflect almost every song that we've all grown up on and every commercial that you've ever even watched. There's a movie, Idiocracy, which is funny. There's a part in it where they walk into a giant chain store. I'm not going to use any names of any of these businesses. I'm not giving them any shout outs, but they walk into a giant store, and a guy is at the front door, and he says, "Welcome to," matter of fact, I even forgot the name of it, but "Welcome to such and such mart. I love you." And that becomes like the new greeting when the people walk, and he's like real listless saying it, and you could tell there's really no emotion in it, but it's similar to what you get now when you walk in the store. "Welcome to so-and-so, how can I help you?" You really don't want to help me. And you really are not, I'm not really that welcome, So this is an example of that, and there's many other ways to break that down. But again, You'll find that all the time. And there's a dissonance there because in one instance you'll say that, okay, she's an energy of conjoining, of people getting together, of love and conception, but she's completely pure and unblemished. That makes no sense. The reality is that as a spiritual being, you are connected to all these archetypes, and they are connected to you. Where you go, you are the head that brings them forward through your ori, or your soul. Your soul is the power, the driving force, and the will of your spirit and every other spirit entity that you work with and come in contact with. Your soul is the grand architect. Keep that in mind. In the Yoruba tradition, we say the ori, but that is the grand architect that governs all of these energies. That's why they say, when something's real good, they say, they put their heart and soul into it. Heart. We understand what that is. Just be Rasta. If Rasta's culture, why do you have to now pretend to be Jamaican? And people would ask them, oh, are you from Jamaica? And they would sit there and lie about it. I've had so many friends sit there and do that. Yeah, my family's from Yard. And they're from, their family's from North Carolina. Stuff like that. And I've seen it across the board. I had a friend who, at one age, he joined the Nation of Islam. He started telling people he was part Arabic. And sometimes even in those different religious systems, you'll see people do things that don't necessarily make a lot of sense. Like you'll wear a turban, and I'm not knocking any of these systems. I'm just saying you'll wear a turban without totally understanding that that turban has a geoclimatic purpose for people who live in the desert. Okay, it allows them to keep themselves warm at night because they can unwrap it and put it around them. You don't necessarily have that issue here. But in doing that, some people think that they are strengthening their spirit or their spirituality or their spiritual connection, but really what they're doing is they're binding back their spirit and making their soul go into a deeper sleep by adhering to human laws of morality and humanity, which the spirit cares nothing about. Nothing. The spirits are indifferent. They don't care about what your morals are and what's fair and what's right. The God of the Bible doesn't even care about that. The Bible says that God is just. So there's a difference between being fair and being just. When you're fair, there's a certain personality that goes along with it. When you're just, you're just dealing with laws. Okay? So the spirits work by a set of laws. Now, do those spirits have the potential to get corrupted? Of course. Because if we know Ogun lives in your heart chakra, Oshun lives in your solar chakra, Yemoja lives in your sacral chakra, Eshu is in your root chakra, Shango being in your throat chakra, Obatala in your brow chakra, and your Ori on your crown chakra. If your chakras, which are your emotional systems, your endocrine, but these are basically your emotions, if those are corrupted and perverted, then the thought forms that you know as to be those Orisha are also corrupted and perverted. And they're looking to ascend and raise when you ascend and raise up your spiritual vibration, which will never happen if you join someone's religion. It will never happen. That's one of the reasons why with the Anu system, it's a system of learning. I don't run an Ile. I could run an Ile.